From the earliest stages of her life, Sabrina Pasterski displayed a form of brilliance that did not fit neatly into conventional labels of talent or giftedness. Rather than being defined by test scores, competitions, or formal accolades, her intelligence revealed itself through curiosity, persistence, and an unusual ability to think independently. This independence of mind would later become one of the defining characteristics of her scientific identity. Her early years offer a compelling case study of how genuine intellectual originality often develops quietly, away from established systems of recognition, driven more by fascination than by ambition. Sabrina Pasterski was born in 1993 in Chicago, Illinois, into an environment that valued learning but did not push her toward predefined success. From a young age, she showed an intense interest in understanding how things worked. Unlike many children who enjoy science as a school subject, she approached it as a language for interpreting reality. She was less interested in memorizing answers and more focused on asking questions that did not yet have clear solutions. This distinction is important because it reveals a mindset aligned with discovery rather than performance. Her curiosity was not reactive but self-generated, a trait often found in scientists whose work later changes the direction of their fields. One of the most frequently cited examples of her early brilliance is her decision, as a teenager, to build and fly her own airplane. While this achievement is often described as impressive or extraordinary, its deeper significance lies not in the act itself, but in the reasoning behind it. She was not attempting to break records or attract attention. Instead, she wanted to understand flight in a complete and physical sense. Books, diagrams, and simulations were not enough. She needed to experience the principles of aerodynamics firsthand, to feel how equations translated into motion, resistance, and control. Building the plane required her to integrate physics, engineering, mathematics, and practical problem solving, but flying it required trust in her understanding of those principles. This project illustrates a crucial aspect of her intellectual development. She learns by constructing reality rather than merely observing it. This approach mirrors the mindset of historical scientific figures who refused to separate theory from experience. In her case, theory was never an abstract exercise disconnected from the physical world. Even at a young age, she demonstrated an instinctive understanding that true knowledge emerges when ideas are tested against reality, revised through failure, and refined through persistence. The airplane was not a symbol of daring, it was a laboratory. Her early education followed a similarly unconventional path. She was homeschooled for much of her childhood, which allowed her to move at her own pace and pursue interests deeply rather than broadly. This freedom was essential to her development as an independent thinker. Traditional classroom settings often reward speed, compliance, and standardized performance, whereas Pasterski's learning style favored depth, reflection, and exploration. She spent long hours reading advanced physics texts, not because they were assigned, but because they answered questions she already had. When she encountered concepts she did not understand, she did not move on. She stayed with them, sometimes for weeks or months, until clarity emerged. This patience with difficulty is another defining trait of her early brilliance. Many bright students rely on quick comprehension, which can unintentionally discourage them from grappling with problems that resist immediate understanding. Pasterski, however, seemed comfortable with confusion. She treated uncertainty not as a failure, but as a signal that something important was waiting to be discovered. This comfort with not knowing is rare and essential in theoretical physics, where progress often depends on working at the edge of what is currently understood. Her independent thinking also manifested in her relationship with authority. She respected knowledge but did not defer automatically to established opinions. When presented with a theory or explanation, she evaluated it on its internal logic rather than on the reputation of its source. This habit did not make her dismissive or arrogant. Instead, it made her careful. She listened, analyzed, and questioned. If something did not make sense to her, she assumed the responsibility lay with her understanding, not with the authority figure, and she worked to resolve the gap. Over time, this practice strengthened her ability to form original insights. Another critical element of her early brilliance was her resistance to external validation. In an academic culture that often emphasizes grades, awards, and rankings, Pasterski remained largely indifferent to such measures. She rarely participated in competitions and avoided the spotlight when possible. This detachment allowed her to pursue ideas that genuinely interested her, even when they were unfashionable or difficult to explain. It also protected her from the pressure to perform intelligence rather than cultivate it. Her motivation came from the joy of understanding, not from recognition. This internal motivation shaped her approach to problem solving. Rather than seeking elegant solutions for their own sake, she focused on physical meaning. She wanted to know not just whether an equation worked, but why it worked and what it said about the universe. This emphasis on meaning over form is a hallmark of deep scientific thinking. It reflects an understanding that mathematics is a tool, not a destination, and that the ultimate goal of physics is insight into reality. Her early exposure to advanced concepts did not make her dismiss basic questions. On the contrary, she often returned to first principles, questioning assumptions that others took for granted. This habit of revisiting fundamentals is one reason she was later able to contribute to cutting-edge research. By refusing to treat foundational ideas as settled, she kept open the possibility that they could be reinterpreted or extended. This is precisely the mindset that enabled past scientific revolutions, including those led by Einstein. The comparison to Einstein often begins here, in this shared emphasis on independent thought. Einstein himself was known for his resistance to rote learning and his preference for conceptual understanding. Like Pasterski, he valued imagination and physical intuition over formalism alone. While such comparisons should be approached cautiously, they are useful in highlighting a particular style of thinking rather than predicting identical outcomes. Pasterski's early brilliance does not lie in repeating Einstein's achievements, but in embodying a similar intellectual courage. Her early life also demonstrates the importance of solitude in the development of original ideas. Pasterski spent long periods working alone, thinking through problems without constant feedback or reassurance. This solitude was not isolation, but concentration. It allowed her to develop her own internal standards of clarity and coherence. When she later entered academic environments filled with experts and competing ideas, she was already comfortable trusting her own reasoning while remaining open to correction. As she transitioned into formal higher education, this early independence did not disappear. Instead, it became more refined. She was able to engage deeply with advanced material while maintaining her distinctive perspective. Professors and peers noticed not only her technical ability, but also her unusual way of framing questions. She often approached problems from angles others had not considered, revealing hidden assumptions or overlooked connections. These moments were not the result of sudden inspiration, but of years spent cultivating independent thought. Her early brilliance, therefore, should not be understood as a sudden emergence of genius, but as the gradual formation of a disciplined, curious, and fearless mind. It was shaped by freedom, patience, and a deep respect for the complexity of nature. This foundation would later support her work in theoretical physics, where originality is not optional but essential. In examining this early phase of her life, one lesson becomes clear. Exceptional scientific thinkers are not defined solely by intelligence, but by how they relate to knowledge itself. Sabrina Pasterski's early years show a relationship built on curiosity rather than competition, understanding rather than memorization, and independence rather than conformity. These qualities, cultivated long before professional recognition, form the true beginning of her scientific journey and help explain why she is often spoken of as a transformative figure in modern physics. This concludes Part A, focusing on the roots of her early brilliance and independent scientific thinking. Sabrina Pasterski's academic journey represents a rare balance between formal education and intellectual independence. When she entered the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, she was already known in certain circles for her unconventional background and early achievements, yet she arrived without the desire to be seen as extraordinary. MIT, an institution built around rigor, speed, and competition, could have easily overwhelmed someone whose learning style favored depth and reflection. Instead, it became a testing ground where her approach to knowledge was sharpened rather than replaced. At MIT, Pasterski pursued physics with a focus that went beyond coursework requirements. While many students approached classes as obstacles to be managed or benchmarks to be cleared, she treated them as opportunities to refine her understanding of reality. She was not content with solving problems correctly. She wanted to know whether the problems themselves were asking the right questions. This distinction shaped how she interacted with lectures, assignments, and discussions. Rather than absorbing material passively, she constantly interrogated it, searching for physical meaning beneath mathematical formalism. Her presence in classrooms was often quiet but intense. She was not known for dominating discussions or displaying intellectual confidence publicly. Instead, she listened carefully, absorbing details, and then asked questions that revealed deep engagement. These questions were often simple in structure, but profound in implication, exposing gaps between mathematical descriptions and physical interpretation. Professors noticed that her inquiries did not aim to impress but to clarify, and this sincerity distinguished her from peers who were equally talented but more performative in their intelligence. MIT demanding curriculum forced Pasterski to confront the tension between speed and understanding. Problem sets were designed to be completed quickly, often rewarding those who could recognize patterns and apply known techniques efficiently. Pasterski, however, sometimes took longer, choosing to work through problems from first principles rather than relying on shortcuts. This approach was not always efficient in the short term, but it strengthened her conceptual foundation. Over time, this depth allowed her to see connections others missed, particularly in areas where standard methods began to break down. Her interest gravitated toward fundamental physics, especially topics involving spacetime, gravity, and the structure of the universe. These subjects require not only technical skill, but also philosophical sensitivity, as they sit at the boundary between what is known and what is still speculative. At MIT, she immersed herself in classical mechanics, quantum mechanics, and electromagnetism, treating them not as separate disciplines, but as different perspectives on a single underlying reality. This integrative mindset would later define her research trajectory. Despite the intense academic environment, Pasterski maintained her resistance to external validation. She did not chase awards, internships, or public recognition, even when such opportunities were readily available. This choice puzzled some observers, who saw her as someone who could easily accumulate credentials. For Pasterski, however, credentials were secondary to coherence. She was more interested in whether her understanding of physics was internally consistent than whether it was externally celebrated. This attitude allowed her to take intellectual risks without fear of failure. As she progressed through MIT, her work increasingly reflected originality. She began exploring questions that were not yet fully formalized in textbooks, particularly those involving symmetries, conservation laws, and the nature of information in physical systems. These interests aligned her with theoretical physics, a field that values insight over application and patience over immediacy. Her professors recognized that she was not merely absorbing existing knowledge, but preparing to extend it. After completing her undergraduate studies, Pasterski transitioned to Harvard University for graduate work, a move that placed her at the center of contemporary theoretical physics research. Harvard offered a different intellectual atmosphere than MIT. While MIT emphasized technical mastery and problem-solving speed, Harvard's physics community placed greater emphasis on conceptual innovation and long-term inquiry. This environment suited Pasterski's temperament and intellectual priorities. At Harvard, she worked closely with leading physicists on problems related to gravity, black holes, and quantum field theory. These areas are among the most challenging in modern science, requiring not only advanced mathematics, but also the ability to navigate unresolved contradictions between established theories. Pasterski's earlier habit of questioning assumptions proved invaluable here. She was comfortable operating in spaces where answers were incomplete, and where progress often involved reframing questions rather than solving them outright. Her graduate work focused on the deep structure of spacetime and the behavior of information in gravitational systems. These topics are central to one of the most pressing problems in physics, reconciling general relativity with quantum mechanics. Pasterski approached this challenge not as a puzzle to be solved quickly, but as a landscape to be explored carefully. She paid close attention to symmetry principles and boundary conditions, searching for insights that could bridge conceptual divides. One of the defining features of her time at Harvard was her emphasis on physical intuition. While many researchers relied heavily on abstract mathematical frameworks, Pasterski consistently sought to ground her work in physical meaning. She asked what equations implied about the nature of reality, not just whether they were mathematically consistent. This focus echoed her earlier learning style and reinforced her reputation as a thinker who prioritized understanding over formal elegance. Her interactions with mentors and peers were marked by mutual respect. Although she was often described as exceptionally gifted, she did not position herself above others. She engaged in collaborative discussions, listened carefully to alternative viewpoints, and adjusted her thinking when presented with convincing arguments. This openness did not dilute her independence. Instead, it strengthened it by exposing her ideas to rigorous scrutiny. She understood that originality without discipline can become speculation, and she worked hard to keep her insights anchored in established principles. Harvard also provided Pasterski with the freedom to pursue unconventional lines of inquiry. She was not pressured to conform to fashionable topics or produce rapid results. This freedom allowed her to explore ideas that were speculative but potentially transformative. In theoretical physics, where progress can be slow and uncertain, such freedom is essential. Pasterski used it not to chase novelty, but to deepen her understanding of long-standing problems. Throughout her academic journey, she remained skeptical of the narratives being constructed around her. Media attention and comparisons to historical figures did not influence her priorities. She continued to focus on her work, often avoiding interviews and public appearances. This distance from publicity preserved her intellectual autonomy and allowed her to define success on her own terms. For her, success meant clarity, not recognition. The transition from MIT to Harvard did not mark a shift in identity, but a refinement of purpose. MIT had provided her with technical tools and discipline. Harvard offered space for conceptual exploration. Together, these experiences shaped her into a physicist capable of operating at the frontiers of knowledge. Her academic journey illustrates that elite institutions do not create brilliance on their own, but they can nurture it when paired with intellectual independence. What stands out most about Pasterski's time at MIT and Harvard is not the prestige of the institutions, but how she used them. She did not allow institutional expectations to define her thinking. Instead, she treated both environments as resources, extracting what she needed while maintaining her distinctive approach to learning. This balance is rare and difficult to achieve, especially in competitive academic settings. Her journey also challenges common assumptions about academic success. It suggests that depth can matter more than speed, and that questioning fundamentals can be more valuable than mastering techniques alone. Pasterski's path shows that rigorous training and independent thought are not opposites but complements. When combined, they can produce insights that neither could achieve alone. By the time she was established at Harvard, it was clear that her academic journey was not a linear ascent, but a continuous process of refinement. Each stage built upon the previous one, guided by a consistent set of values: curiosity, patience, and intellectual honesty. These values shaped not only what she studied, but how she studied, influencing her relationships, her research choices, and her long-term goals. This academic journey, from MIT to Harvard, forms a critical chapter in understanding why Sabrina Pasterski is regarded as an exceptional figure in modern physics. It reveals how formal education, when approached with independence and discipline, can become a powerful platform for original thought. This concludes part of the second keynote, focusing on her academic journey and the intellectual formation that took place within these two institutions. Sabrina Pasterski's scientific contributions emerge from a place where patience, abstraction, and physical intuition intersect. Rather than producing work that seeks immediate application or visibility, her research is focused on questions that sit at the deepest foundations of physics. These are questions about how the universe stores information, how spacetime behaves at its most extreme limits, and how seemingly incompatible theories might ultimately speak the same language. Her contributions are considered groundbreaking not because they offer simple answers, but because they reshape how the questions themselves are framed. One of the central themes of her work involves gravity and spacetime, particularly in relation to black holes. Black holes are not merely exotic cosmic objects. They are testing grounds for the laws of physics. In them, gravity becomes so strong that classical descriptions of spacetime break down, while quantum effects, usually confined to microscopic scales, become unavoidable. For decades, physicists have struggled to understand how information behaves when it enters a black hole, leading to what is known as the information paradox. Pasterski's work engages directly with this problem, not by proposing dramatic resolutions, but by carefully examining the assumptions underlying it. Her approach to this problem reflects her broader scientific style. She pays close attention to symmetry, a concept that plays a central role in modern physics. Symmetries describe properties of systems that remain unchanged under certain transformations, and they often reveal deep conservation laws. Pasterski explored how symmetries at the boundaries of spacetime might encode information in ways previously overlooked. Rather than viewing spacetime as a passive stage on which events unfold, her work treats it as an active participant in the storage and transmission of information. This perspective leads to subtle but powerful insights. If information is not lost but redistributed or encoded in unexpected ways, then the apparent contradictions between general relativity and quantum mechanics may be less severe than once thought. Pasterski's research suggests that information could be preserved through structures at the edges of spacetime, challenging the assumption that black holes erase what falls into them. This does not solve the information paradox outright, but it reframes it, offering new directions for investigation. Another significant aspect of her work involves scattering theory, a framework used to describe how particles interact and deflect off one another. While scattering is often treated as a technical tool, Pasterski explored its deeper implications for understanding spacetime symmetries. She investigated how soft particles, those with very low energy, play a crucial role in preserving information during interactions. These soft particles were once considered negligible, but her work highlights their importance in maintaining consistency between physical laws. This line of research connects seemingly unrelated areas of physics, linking particle interactions with gravitational effects and spacetime geometry. By revealing these connections, Pasterski contributes to a more unified view of physical reality. Her work suggests that the boundaries between subfields of physics are more porous than traditionally assumed, and that progress may depend on recognizing patterns that cut across established divisions. What makes these contributions particularly notable is their conceptual nature. Pasterski is not focused on refining existing models for incremental improvement. Instead, she operates at a level where definitions themselves are questioned. She asks what is meant by concepts like locality, causality, and information, and whether these ideas retain their meaning under extreme conditions. This willingness to question fundamentals is essential in a field where existing theories, though successful, are known to be incomplete. Her work also reflects a careful balance between abstraction and physical meaning. While her research is mathematically sophisticated, it is never purely formal. She consistently seeks to interpret equations in terms of physical processes and observable consequences. This emphasis ensures that her contributions remain connected to reality, even when dealing with highly abstract concepts. It also makes her work accessible, in principle, to experimental verification, even if such tests lie far in the future. The influence of her contributions extends beyond specific results. By highlighting the role of overlooked elements, such as boundary conditions and low-energy particles, she encourages the physics community to reconsider what it deems important. This shift in perspective can open new avenues of research and inspire others to re-examine problems long thought to be intractable. In this sense, her impact is not limited to what she has discovered, but includes how she has taught others to look. Her research environment reflects the collaborative nature of modern theoretical physics, yet she maintains a distinct voice within it. She engages with existing literature critically, building upon it without being constrained by it. When she identifies gaps or inconsistencies, she treats them not as flaws to be ignored, but as opportunities for insight. This approach requires confidence tempered by humility, an understanding that progress emerges through dialogue between ideas rather than from isolated brilliance. The groundbreaking nature of her work is also evident in its timing. She is contributing at a moment when physics is undergoing a period of reflection. The major frameworks of the 20th century have proven remarkably successful, yet they resist unification. In this context, Pasterski's focus on foundational questions is especially relevant. Rather than proposing speculative new theories disconnected from existing knowledge, she seeks coherence, aiming to understand how known principles might fit together more naturally. Her contributions also demonstrate restraint, a quality sometimes undervalued in theoretical work. She does not rush to claim solutions or make grand declarations. Instead, she allows ideas to develop gradually, testing them against multiple perspectives. This restraint enhances the credibility of her work and ensures that it can serve as a stable foundation for future research. The description of her work as groundbreaking, therefore, should be understood in a specific sense. It is not groundbreaking because it overturns physics overnight, but because it deepens the intellectual groundwork upon which future breakthroughs may rest. By clarifying concepts, revealing hidden connections, and challenging unexamined assumptions, she strengthens the framework within which more comprehensive theories can eventually emerge. Her contributions also reflect an ethical dimension to scientific inquiry. She demonstrates respect for the complexity of nature and caution toward oversimplification. In an era where rapid publication and visibility can distort priorities, her work stands as an example of integrity and intellectual patience. This ethos influences how her research is received and how it shapes the broader scientific conversation. As her career continues, the full significance of her contributions may only become clear in retrospect. Many foundational ideas in physics were not immediately recognized for their importance. What distinguishes Pasterski's work is that it addresses problems that are central rather than peripheral, and it does so with a level of depth that invites long-term engagement. Her research does not close debates. It sustains them in more productive forms. In this sense, her contributions to theoretical physics are as much about cultivating understanding as they are about producing results. She operates at the level where physics becomes philosophy grounded in mathematics and observation. This is the level at which lasting advances are made, not through accumulation of data alone, but through shifts in how reality is conceptualized. This concludes part A of the third keynote, focusing on the nature and significance of Sabrina Pasterski's groundbreaking contributions to theoretical physics, and the quiet but profound ways in which her work reshapes our understanding of the universe. The description of Sabrina Pasterski as the next Einstein did not originate from a single award, announcement, or institutional endorsement. Instead, it emerged gradually through observation, discussion, and reflection within scientific and public circles. This comparison, while striking, is not meant to suggest that history is repeating itself or that one individual can simply inherit the role of another. Rather, it signals a recognition of a particular way of thinking, a style of inquiry, and a relationship with knowledge that echoes qualities associated with Albert Einstein while remaining firmly rooted in the present era. Einstein's name has become a cultural symbol for intellectual revolution, originality, and the courage to challenge established frameworks. When Pasterski is associated with this name, it is not because she has replicated Einstein's discoveries, but because she operates in a similar intellectual space, where foundational assumptions are questioned rather than accepted. This recognition reflects a belief that she possesses the rare ability to see beyond the surface of established theories and to engage with physics at the level where its deepest contradictions reside. The comparison also arises from her resistance to conventional academic narratives. Einstein famously struggled within rigid educational systems and was often misunderstood by his contemporaries early in his career. Pasterski's path, though different in context, reflects a similar independence. She does not define success through titles, accolades, or public visibility. This detachment from recognition paradoxically strengthens her reputation, as it suggests that her motivation is aligned with understanding rather than status. In a scientific culture increasingly shaped by metrics and visibility, this stance stands out. Public fascination with the idea of a next Einstein often reveals more about societal hopes than about the individual being described. It reflects a desire for reassurance that transformative thinkers still exist, capable of addressing unanswered questions about the universe. In Pasterski's case, this fascination is intensified by the nature of the problems she studies. Questions about spacetime, gravity, and information are not merely technical. They touch on humanity's fundamental understanding of reality. When someone engages deeply with such questions, it invites comparison to figures who previously reshaped that understanding. Within the scientific community, the comparison is treated with caution. Physicists are acutely aware that Einstein's contributions were historically unique, emerging at a time when experimental and theoretical conditions aligned in specific ways. Yet even among cautious observers, there is recognition that Pasterski embodies qualities that are increasingly rare. She demonstrates an ability to combine rigorous mathematics with physical intuition, and she approaches unsolved problems without being constrained by prevailing trends. These qualities are what give the comparison its substance. The significance of this recognition lies less in the label itself, and more in what it reveals about expectations for the future of physics. Modern science is deeply collaborative, relying on large teams, complex instruments, and shared frameworks. The idea of a single individual reshaping physics can seem outdated. However, foundational shifts still require individuals who are willing to rethink assumptions at a conceptual level. Pasterski's recognition suggests that such individuals can still emerge, even within highly structured scientific systems. Media portrayals of her as the next Einstein often simplify her story, focusing on early achievements or personal mystique. While these narratives attract attention, they risk obscuring the true nature of her work. The significance of the comparison is not found in dramatic anecdotes, but in sustained intellectual discipline. Pasterski's work is slow, careful, and often abstract. It does not lend itself easily to sensational headlines, which makes the persistence of the comparison even more telling. It suggests that those who engage seriously with her work perceive something enduring rather than momentary. Another important dimension of this recognition is its symbolic impact on younger generations. Einstein's legacy has long served as a gateway image for aspiring scientists, representing the possibility of deep insight emerging from curiosity and imagination. When Pasterski is associated with this legacy, it creates a contemporary reference point, especially for students who may not see themselves reflected in traditional scientific archetypes. Her presence challenges narrow definitions of what a groundbreaking scientist looks like or how they behave. The comparison also invites reflection on how scientific greatness is defined. Einstein's contributions were revolutionary not only because they introduced new equations, but because they changed how space, time, and energy were conceptualized. Similarly, Pasterski's significance lies in her potential to influence conceptual frameworks rather than deliver isolated results. Recognition as the next Einstein implies an expectation that her work may help reorient the questions physics asks, even if definitive answers remain distant. There is also an implicit acknowledgement of intellectual courage in this recognition. Challenging foundational assumptions carries professional risk. Established theories are supported by decades of experimental success and institutional investment. Questioning them requires confidence, patience, and a willingness to be misunderstood. Pasterski's willingness to engage with such challenges aligns with the historical image of Einstein as someone who pursued clarity even when it conflicted with prevailing views. At the same time, the comparison highlights the dangers of premature canonization. Labeling someone as the next Einstein can create unrealistic expectations and distort public understanding of scientific progress. Breakthroughs rarely follow linear or predictable paths, and they often involve long periods of uncertainty. The significance of Pasterski's recognition, therefore, depends on maintaining perspective. It should be seen as an acknowledgement of promise and approach, not as a prophecy of specific outcomes. Within academic circles, her recognition has practical implications. It draws attention to the importance of supporting research that prioritizes depth over immediacy. It also reinforces the value of intellectual diversity, reminding institutions that unconventional thinkers may require unconventional paths. Pasterski's career demonstrates that transformative potential is not always aligned with standard measures of productivity or visibility. The comparison to Einstein also reflects continuity within physics. While methods and technologies evolve, certain intellectual virtues remain essential. Curiosity, independence, and a willingness to question fundamentals are as relevant today as they were in the early 20th century. Pasterski's recognition suggests that these virtues still command respect, even in an era dominated by specialization and complexity. Ultimately, what this recognition signifies is not certainty about the future, but confidence in a particular way of engaging with knowledge. It affirms that physics remains an open-ended human endeavor, shaped not only by data and equations, but by imagination and courage. Pasterski's association with Einstein's legacy places her within a tradition of thinkers who view science as a means of understanding reality at its most fundamental level. The true measure of this recognition will unfold over time. Einstein himself did not set out to become a symbol. His ideas earned that status through their lasting impact. Similarly, Pasterski's work will speak for itself through its influence on how problems are framed, how concepts are understood, and how future physicists are inspired. The label of the next Einstein is less a destination than a reflection of a moment, capturing the sense that in her work there is a rare alignment of depth, originality, and intellectual integrity. This concludes part A of the fourth keynote, focusing on the recognition of Sabrina Pasterski as the next Einstein, and the deeper significance of what that comparison represents for science, culture, and the future of theoretical physics. Sabrina Pasterski's influence on the future of science extends beyond the technical content of her research and into the culture, values, and expectations that shape how science is practiced. Her presence in contemporary physics represents a quiet but meaningful shift, one that emphasizes depth over speed, understanding over display, and curiosity over competition. In a time when scientific progress is often measured by output, visibility, and short, long-term impact, her approach offers an alternative model that may prove especially influential for the next generation of researchers. The future of science depends not only on new discoveries, but on how scientists are trained to think. Pasterski's work and demeanor highlight the importance of intellectual patience. Many of the most significant problems in physics today do not yield to quick solutions. They require years, sometimes decades, of sustained attention. By choosing to engage with foundational questions rather than fashionable topics, she reinforces the idea that long-term inquiry is still valued and necessary. This message is particularly important for young researchers who may feel pressured to prioritize rapid publication over meaningful exploration. Her impact is also evident in how she reframes the idea of success in science. Traditional academic pathways often reward those who are highly visible, outspoken, and adept at navigating institutional systems. Pasterski challenges this norm by demonstrating that profound influence can emerge from quiet, focused work. She does not cultivate a public persona or seek validation through constant exposure. For young scientists who may feel alienated by performative academic culture, her example offers reassurance that there are multiple ways to contribute meaningfully. Another important aspect of her influence lies in her treatment of uncertainty. Many students enter science expecting clear answers and linear progress, only to become discouraged when confronted with ambiguity. Pasterski's work operates almost entirely within uncertainty. She engages with problems where solutions are incomplete and where even the questions themselves are evolving. By doing so, she normalizes uncertainty as an essential part of scientific life rather than a sign of failure. This perspective can help young researchers develop resilience and confidence in their ability to work at the boundaries of knowledge. Her influence also extends to how interdisciplinary thinking is valued. Pasterski's research connects ideas from gravity, quantum theory, particle physics, and information theory. She does not treat these fields as isolated domains, but as interconnected perspectives on the same underlying reality. This integrative approach encourages future scientists to move beyond narrow specialization and to look for patterns that cross traditional boundaries. As scientific problems become increasingly complex, this ability to synthesize ideas will be crucial. For young researchers, especially those at the beginning of their careers, Pasterski's path demonstrates that it is possible to remain intellectually honest while operating within elite institutions. She benefits from the resources and mentorship of leading universities, yet she does not allow institutional expectations to define her intellectual priorities. This balance between engagement and independence is difficult to achieve, but it is essential for sustaining creativity within structured environments. Her example suggests that institutions can be used as platforms rather than constraints. Her impact on representation in science is also significant, even though she does not actively position herself as a public advocate. Simply by existing as a respected figure in theoretical physics, she broadens the image of who belongs in the field. For students who may not see themselves reflected in traditional scientific role models, her presence can be quietly transformative. She shows that dedication to understanding, rather than conformity to stereotypes, is what ultimately defines a scientist. The way she approaches mentorship and collaboration further shapes her influence. Pasterski is known for engaging seriously with ideas regardless of their source. She listens carefully, asks clarifying questions, and treats discussions as shared explorations rather than competitions. This attitude fosters environments where ideas can develop without fear of dismissal. For young researchers, encountering such an approach can be formative, shaping how they interact with peers and how they evaluate their own ideas. Her emphasis on first principles also has lasting implications for scientific education. Many training programs focus heavily on technique, sometimes at the expense of conceptual clarity. Pasterski's work reminds the scientific community that techniques are tools, not substitutes for understanding. By consistently returning to fundamental questions, she reinforces the importance of building knowledge on solid conceptual foundations. This approach can influence how future curricula are designed and how students are encouraged to engage with material. The broader impact of her work on science also involves restoring a sense of wonder. Modern research environments can become dominated by administrative pressures, funding concerns, and incremental goals. Pasterski's focus on deep questions about spacetime, information, and reality recenters science around its original motivation, the desire to understand the universe. This recentering can reinvigorate researchers who feel disconnected from the meaning of their work. Her influence is particularly relevant in an era of rapid technological advancement. While technology accelerates data collection and computation, it does not replace the need for conceptual insight. Pasterski's work underscores the idea that understanding cannot be automated. It requires human imagination, intuition, and judgment. This message is crucial for young scientists entering a world increasingly shaped by artificial intelligence and large-scale computation. It reminds them that their unique value lies in how they think, not just in what tools they use. The impact of her approach also extends to scientific ethics. By prioritizing understanding over recognition, she models a form of integrity that resists the distortions of competition. This integrity encourages careful reasoning, honest uncertainty, and respect for complexity. In the long term, such values help sustain public trust in science and protect it from becoming purely instrumental. Her influence on the future of science is therefore cumulative rather than immediate. It operates through example rather than instruction, through presence rather than proclamation. Young researchers who encounter her work may not immediately recognize its significance, but over time, its emphasis on depth, patience, and clarity can shape how they approach their own questions. This kind of influence is difficult to measure, but it is often the most enduring. As science continues to evolve, it will require not only new tools and theories, but also renewed attention to how knowledge is pursued. Pasterski's career offers a vision of scientific life that is both rigorous and reflective, ambitious and restrained. It suggests that progress does not always come from moving faster, but from seeing more clearly. The future of science will be shaped by countless individuals, each contributing in different ways. Pasterski's role within this future may not be defined by a single discovery or moment of recognition, but by the standard she sets for intellectual engagement. Her influence lies in showing that it is still possible to approach the universe with humility, curiosity, and courage. For young researchers standing at the threshold of scientific careers, this example matters deeply. It tells them that they do not need to sacrifice authenticity for success or curiosity for productivity. It shows that asking fundamental questions is not a luxury but a responsibility. And it affirms that science, at its best, remains a human endeavor guided by the desire to understand rather than the need to impress. This concludes part of the fifth keynote, focusing on the impact of Sabrina Pasterski on the future of science and on the minds of young researchers who will carry that future forward.